Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you again. I'm Dr. Paula Duren. I'm the Director for Universal Dementia Caregivers. And we're here this afternoon because we want to start we have conversations on Thursday at 1 o'clock on a variety of topics. Today, what I'd like to start is our conversations with caregivers, because I think we need to hear directly from them to know how they're doing, to love on them, to have them share some of their issues, and to provide them with support. And so you'll see a change in our format, and we'll put that on our website, on our Facebook page. So you'll see that at least once a month, we'll have a caregiver conversation and kind of call it our caregiver connection. Today we have Craig Mann, who's a young man that I met just recently, and it's been such a pleasure. He cares for his mom, and he is recently returned to Michigan. He was born and reared in Michigan, and he was in Columbus, Ohio, and had been there for 13 years. And then there was a need that mom needed help, and Craig came home. Let me welcome Craig to Universal's Dementia Discussion on Caregivers. Welcome, Craig.
Thank you, Dr. Duren. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
And what we'd like to do is we have some questions. We really just want to see if we can frame a conversation to talk about caregiving with you. So let me just step back for a moment and just first tell us about mom. Who is mom, and how did you get back here from Columbus after 13 years?
Absolutely. So certainly that introduction brings a tremendous smile to my face when you ask the question, who is mom? So mom is everything to me. It has been mom and I against the world for many, many years. We have a very, very small family, and my mother just has been counselor, an advisor, a mentor, my best friend for sure. And it's just been a privilege to have returned home from Columbus, Ohio, after setting up my life down there, my profession down there. I had gone down to Columbus just seeking a change some years ago with mom's blessing. And ultimately, as the years moved ahead, we were working on plans for her to actually come to Columbus with me. And suddenly, some of the needs that you're describing changed, where she was restricted with some of the things that she could not do. And so it was a no-brainer for me to return home, to be here again as an honor and a privilege to be with her at this time.
Let me first of all tell you thank you. And I know no one has to tell you thank you for taking care of your mom, but I think it's such a precious gift, because caregiving is hard work. And I'm sure you're learning that if you haven't already learned that.
Sure.
And it affects your time, it affects your heart, it affects your spirit, it affects your money. In so many different ways, caregiving impacts you. And I want you to just kind of step back for a moment and talk about when you first realized mom needed you more than you imagined.
Yes, I think, Dr. Duren, that, this is a significant point that you're raising right now. I can honestly say, in thinking about heading into this conversation today, I think for any person who finds themselves in a similar situation, one of the things I've reflected on many times is, did I miss anything along the way? Any red flags? Were there any things that I could have done differently prior to where we are now? And I don't still really have the answer to that. But I think that most importantly, just kind of being in that space of being attentive, making sure that you're kind of seeing what those needs are, being proactive and understanding the person. And obviously there's no more intimate connection than a mother and a son, but a lot of times I think that certainly we can get outside of our real priorities, because the world moves us faster ultimately than we need to be moved sometimes. I can say to you that even during this COVID season, if you will, that it certainly has given me new life and new perspective around those things that are very, very precious. And, I think that, again, just being attentive to kind of those signs that you may see going into where she currently is, are things that I wrestled with during this process.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that went into your decision as you were looking and being attentive? What were you seeing that said something has to change?
Sure. It kind of first began, Dr. Duren, with noticing a little bit of difference in her personality, a desire to not, or lack of desire to want to do things, to remain active, a little bit of secluding herself, if you will, conversations around, hey, well, all my girlfriends are at this age now and we're all retired and, you know, everyone's kind of staying home and that kind of thing, you know, and kind of almost making up a reason to give up, if you will. And then from that, it kind of led to things a little more detailed around repeating of things, right? So, hey, we're sitting and we're watching, you know, one of our favorite TV shows together or something like that. And a commercial would come on and we'd watch the commercial and she'd laugh and she said, wow, that's a funny commercial. We watched the next segment of that favorite TV show and then the same commercial might repeat itself within that same hour and she'd laugh as though that commercial was new. Almost kind of like she had never seen that same commercial, you know, and in the beginning, because I was still in denial, you know, I would remind her, hey, mom, that's kind of the same commercial, so forth and so on. Obviously, now at this stage, I've learned, you know, that redirecting and, you know, going against what they believe is not the best scenario, just to kind of go with, and I've learned those from great advisors such as yourself and just trying to figure out this process along the way.
So then mom is in the early stages of some form of dementia, is that correct?
She is, that's correct.
Now, and I heard you say that you were in some levels of denial. Let me first reinforce you to say that is not unusual. But as you and I have talked though, you feel like a realist. And you came along really quickly because your conversation changed from this is different to now what do we need to do? Because your goal was how do we make this happen properly?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, there's one thing that I can say, and I'm sure this is preaching to the choir, there is no blueprint for this work. There is no handbook, you know, it is really just a, you know, fight or flight kind of scenario. And, you know, I really did believe, again, going back to the piece of denial, that I could somehow, by my words, by my actions, by my effort, coach her out of this stage, you know, not recognizing or even, again, wanting to admit that, no, this is actually a disease, you know, that affects, you know, millions of people, you know, but you don't see it often when you're caring for the one that's closest to you. You know, hey, mom, you know, you've been the one that shared all this amazing advice with me, you know, my entire life, my go-to, so forth and so on. How could you possibly be in a scenario where, you know, something is affecting your brain? It was just very, very hard to wrap myself around. And the more I would fight against it, if you will, the more reality would kick in that it's time to seek others to help me with this battle.
And I want to stress and stroke and reinforce the commitment that I've seen in you for loving on mom, because it's absolutely just marvelous. Because what happens for a lot of caregivers, we initially become overwhelmed. Like, oh no, it can't be mom. You know, what, she's brilliant, and all the things that go with that. But you quickly move to, I'm dealing with this. I'm also dealing with my emotions at the same time. But how do I address this? Tell me some of the first things you did in your plan once you kind of accepted that, and in the process of accepting that mom has dementia. What kind of tasks were you doing? What were you looking for? Right.
So I'll be very honest in saying that this thing, and perhaps this helps the conversation, doctor, is this scenario, if you will, that she's in currently, and maybe we'll kind of go back around this. The slower style of what was happening to her was kind of just happening, a little bit at a time. And, you know, I would talk to her, just have conversations. Hey, you know, do you feel like this is happening or that's happening? And again, she would dismiss it as, no, this is normal. Everyone, all of my peer group, we're all like this, and I would kind of laugh at her and say, well, that's okay. And certainly, I have a lot of respect for your peer group and my extended aunts, if you will, several 50 different aunts, right? Her best friends over the years and these kinds of things, but I'm concerned about you. So I'm not overly concerned about what's happening outside of this house. I'm concerned about what you and I can do together. But she didn't really seem to wrap her mind around the fact that something was different. It just, and I didn't know how to press her without alarming her. So I didn't want to make a huge issue about it. And then, as you well know, we had an extreme scenario that took place that then took on another layer to this thing. And that's when some of these actions that you're describing took place. And so I'll hold it right there and maybe we open that up.
Well, and I think that let's shift. Let's kind of deepen it,
Okay.
because what you're starting to describe is that I became aware
Sure.
that mom had something different. I hadn't put a label on it yet. I wasn't quite sure, but as I watched it and loved on her and paid attention, I started saying, I'm seeing some repetitive motion, some repetitive questioning. I'm seeing some other things. But on one side of your head, it's like, no, not my mama. But on the other side of your head, said, you know what? I need to at least think about this and figure out how we manage it. What were some of the things that you started doing? I know that one of the things we talked about is how do your hands are, well, what do we do? So what did you do?
Absolutely. So the first thing, and again, this is kind of based on my professional background as a project manager and so forth and so on, was attack the resources. Just a huge believer in, especially now, probably 10 times more than ever, that there is no way that I was going to be able to fight this battle on my own, right? So I just began to Google and research and connect with peer groups and things like that. Hey, do you know anyone that's experiencing this? And it became an outlet, quite honestly, for me, because I found that I, again, was not fighting this battle on my own. Right. Several people had been down this path. They began to share information, which I think is key. So it's one thing, again, to do the Google searches and things like that, but it's another thing to have referrals that are coming from people that, that you trust. As you well know, Dr. Duren, one of the things that has been key for me is the addition of an amazing caregiver. I'll share her name perhaps through this process, but she has been instrumental in just kind of calming the waters for us. And again, staying in touch with the primary care physician, Dr. Karen Russell-Little, who is just a tremendous advocate as her primary, and making sure that, hey, although I'm internal medicine, here are some referrals to some other scenarios that perhaps will be beneficial to your scenario. If you work those referrals, certainly as the primary, I'll do everything to support you on this end. So, there were just a number of different things, and ultimately that started to develop a task list, if you will, for me. So each day that I would get up, I would make sure that I'm hitting every goal on the task list, and I would see how much I could exhaust for that particular day. And then I get up the next day and try to do it all over again.
So if I were listening to you as a caregiver, you said a couple of things, and I want to make sure that we pull those out. The first thing you said is you have to be honest with yourself.
Yes.
And being honest with yourself, you then need to do some learning. What is this thing I'm dealing with? What is the situation I'm dealing with? But also on the human level, staying connected, that this is not an intellectual process. This is both an emotional as well as an intellectual journey. Sure. But there's it's all about mom at that moment. And then you said, find your resources, what's out there. You said, build a care team. I don't know if you realize you said all this so far. You said, build a care team. And in building your care team, include people that are actually going through the experience or have been through the experience, because they bring a totally different perception than folks who are just talking about it.
Absolutely. All of those things. And I can tell you again, just by professional background and just being the Capricorn in me, these things you think you can control, and this was a scenario where, quickly I had to realize that this is bigger than me. This is something that as a lay person, as a son, as a you know, the human side that you described, that's ultimately all I was. And I was thrown into this, and I had to, you know, pull back some of my ego. I had to pull back some of my management processes kind of mentality. Like, this is not a 9 to 5 scenario where you're going
That's
to
right.
a staff and this is going to happen and that kind of thing. I had to really realize that this is going to be something that I need to pull back from and let the experts like yourself and others, you know, guide me through this process if I'm ultimately going to find any success.
When you think about, it's interesting, the contrast that you made between your professional self. A lot of the talents you have professionally are helping you in this journey at the same time.
They have helped. They have helped.
And so the things I've seen is that you do stay focused, you get the pieces and you pursue it to its end. My concern, and we've talked about this before, what are you doing for you in the process of this? Because I think it's pretty easy to get so overwhelmed with this whole area journey of loving on and caring for a loved one with dementia or any kind of illness. What are you doing for you?
Absolutely. And this is huge. I can be very transparent in saying that it is, Dr. Duren, something that I am currently struggling with. My caregiver, not only, and I've added a second caregiver, I've shared that with you as well. So now I kind of have 7-day coverage. I have an extended period of hours now. My primary caregiver always says to me, you're too close to the fire. You got to have some separation time. When I come here, I want you away from what's going on here with mom. You need to leave the house. You need to be gone for the entire time that I'm here, so forth and so on. I've taken heed to that most days. Obviously, again, with the COVID protocols, there's not a lot of spaces and places you can just go to.
Right.
Or different, you know, spaces that you would normally go to, you know, those things are different. But, you know, I've tried to journal is one thing that I think has been very helpful to me in terms of, you know, at the end of the night, I'll just kind of record my thoughts, frustrations, emotions, positives, whatever that has been. And then lately I've been walking, you know, trying to get some exercise. So
very good.
Probably need to be doing more than that. I had started kind of a vegetarian vegan lifestyle in December, and then this happened in March. Lost a lot of weight and feeling very healthy, but this emotional side also brought me back to my emotional foods, right? So, you know, when I would finally get her down at night, you know, would find myself kind of binge eating and these kinds of things. And so it's that war between what you're describing, self-care, and making sure you're managing the other sides of things, because I know that for the two of us to do well with this effort, I have to remain healthy myself.
And I am so excited. You told me about your caregiver and the gift that she is to you and the gift she is to mom, and that you're building, as we talked about, that care team, and you have a second caregiver, which now gives you some comfort, because a lot of times we want to be there thinking that we have to do it. And one of the things I've learned is that caregivers, that especially those that are good, they're like, you don't have to tell me how to do this. I may not do it the way you do it, but I promise you, I'm going to do it the best that I can. And we have to become comfortable with that so that we can take some time off. Because if we're like walking behind the caregiver, they're like, well, why am I here? If you're going to walk behind me and question everything that I'm doing.
No question, no question. I'll raise my hand and say that I was guilty of that in the beginning. And again, back to the management mentality, you know, the micromanaging sometimes almost. It was just a very interesting scenario to have. I will just go ahead and call her name because I'm sure at some point she would be a great candidate for you to have this same kind of conversation with Miss Jeanette. She has anchored my life. When I say anchored my life, she is so much more, Dr. Duren, than just a caregiver. And I can tell you definitively, taking everything away from my own self and putting everything on her, she has restored my mother's will. She has restored my mother's desire to want to go forward. She has been just everything to us. And I think, you know, beyond the other things that she does that I know, I'm so fortunate in just having her beyond the caregiving side, the relationship that she established with my mother, the conversations, the dialogue, the memories that they shared together is literally giving my mother life and keeping my mother alive.
What a gift. What an absolute gift to have someone on your team just like that.
Absolutely.
Where mom is the priority and
Yes.
caring for her.
Very thankful.
As you project out, what do you worry about? If anything.
Yeah, and I think, Dr. Duren, this is kind of where we talked about the extreme scenario, and then maybe if I kind of just quickly run through that. So as you well know, this kind of slow pattern that we looked at in the beginning, where there were these red flags or slow digression, if you will, hit with this acute urinary tract infection, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea was so devastating for a senior, right? And so it took her down this tremendous rabbit's hole that she really truly has still not recovered from. So coupled with that, and wherever she is on the spectrum of dementia, she is now non-ambulatory. The inability to move around, to walk, she is bedbound and has been now for over, close to 4 months. And I was very worried that her inability to get out of the bed, to do things on her own, so forth and so on, were going to lead to her giving up. We're going to lead to her just saying, hey, enough is enough. Caregiver or no caregiver, son or no son, motivational speaking and trying to pull me out and praying for me, all of these things, I quit. So my concern at this point, Dr. Duren, is can we get past the primary goal now, which is can we get you back on your feet? Can we restore you somehow, some way, even with the elements of dementia, to walking in full independence? And if not, what does that ultimately mean? And I'll share with you in kind of closing out this piece, when she left the skilled nursing facility that I was forced to have her admitted to after 3 weeks of non-progression, the inability to respond to a physical therapist, occupational therapist, they said, Mr. Mann, you probably want to deal with sending her into another home or group home, long-term nursing, because she is in between palliative care and hospice. And I was devastated. Just didn't think, I didn't know what to expect, but I said, tell you what, let me determine that. Okay. So I'll we'll have her come home and I'll build a team as you're describing, and we'll love on her as best we can. And we're going to do our best to extend her life, but I am concerned that bed, as everyone professionally has said, is her greatest hurdle right now. And if she cannot manage moving beyond that, what does that mean for myself and what does that mean for her?
I want to talk about a couple of things that you just said. It had to feel devastating for the physician to say that she was towards palliative care and hospice.
Devastating.
I remember our conversation. What I loved about our conversation is that once we asked the question of you, where would she be best cared for? You came back with such power and such strength to say, you know what, if she goes into a nursing home, we've got the risk of the virus at that nursing home because the numbers are so high.
Yes.
You said, I'm willing to take my chances at home, build a team around her, and see if we can't move her. Absolutely. And that was powerful for me when you said it with such conviction.
Thank you. And again, you and I have talked, as you well know, and I've talked to others, but I can't give any credit to myself in any of this, Dr. Duren, no matter how long this goes on, so forth and so on. This is a millionth of the effort that my mother has given to me my entire life. So again, it's a privilege. It's a no-brainer. There's these decisions around bringing her home or caring for her or, whatever I'm doing. It's just a direct reflection of the things she's done for me my entire life. And so there's no repayment in this. There's no way I could ever do that. But what I did commit to is that if, we would quote unquote fail in this process, knocking on wood, right? We would fail. in an intimate setting around the people who care for her the most, and we would control the variables about how much effort is put into her rehabilitation before we say, let's just throw our hands up and commit to something, you know, as in between as palliative and hospice. And I'll add to that, as you might be able to see the shirt, and I'll kind of raise it up. We're believers here. So I have on kind of, you know, King Jesus, if you will. And so
All right.
as a family of believers and faith-based family, you know, we know that there's an ultimate caregiver and an ultimate physician in place. And so we lean to that more than anything. And that, again, has been a strategic part of this entire experience, is always trusting in God.
And see, one of the things we do, and just reinforcing you, I believe that being a caregiver is a gift. And we teach caregivers that it's a gift. And I heard you say that it's a privilege to be able to walk the last journey, or the journeys with the loved ones in our lives, because somewhere in there you're growing. There's a moment that's for you,
Yes.
Not just for mom, but it's for
Amen.
you and your growth.
So true.
Let me just transition and talk about, I know that you've got a rehab team together. You've got some physical therapists coming to the house. You're encouraging them to try some things they've never tried before. And I want to reinforce the way you're doing that. Sure. Because you're like, okay, mom needs to get out of that bed, but it's not an issue of her body not having the capacity.
Right.
What you've come to learn is that she might be scared at this point. Yes. Because of potential falls that she may have had in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's exactly where we are today. And again, as you're stating, we have a home care company, healthcare company that has started with us prior to skilled nursing. Then after, I've been very pleased with the care that we're receiving, but there was this kind of gray area scenario where she did experience some falls in the skilled nursing facility. I was made aware, you and I discussed this, of every time that happened. And it was tough. It was tough to hear. But I know that coming out of that, this mental connection between when we stand her up or transfer her with the gait belt and all of these techniques, right, that we learn through this process and try to get her up on the walker. It's just not every physical therapist that has seen her, every occupational therapist, nurse practitioner has said she has the physical strength to do any of the things that we're hoping she can do, but there is a complete disconnect around why she won't. And we know, in my mind, it's just fear. There's an anxiety of what she experienced, and we have not been able to figure that out. That is the number one thing, back to the thing regarding what do you worry about most? What is that thing? And I obsess about it. I again, research and looked on the geriatric side, and I looked on some other things that have been talked to me about, but and she, quite honestly, Dr. Duren, and I'll share this, and this is kind of important to me as well. It's also been a fight regarding I don't care. So that's an honest statement that my mother makes often. You know, I don't care if I stay in this bed forever. I'm comfortable because of the amazing work that my caregivers do. They keep her so comfortable. I mean, she's like she's, you know, living the life. She's at the Four Seasons at this point. But, you know, we try to encourage her that, hey, this is not a life that is best lived. You know, there's a lot more life to live. There's a lot more things that I would love to do with you, but I'm just not sure how we break that anxiety around the biggest goal, the biggest hurdle that we have, which is your ability to regain some sense of independence. And that independence is only going to come by you being able to get out of that bed physically yourself and start to do things on your own, hopefully.
Well, and I know that you've got a team that's working on that, and we've talked about some strategies of ways to work with that.
Yes.
I want to, again, because the disease you're working with is progressive anyway, the challenge is there's going to be new sets of issues as you go. But I want you to focus on not only where you're going, but the way you have been successful in the past. Sure. And I know you don't take any pride in that necessarily, But I need you as a caregiver to accept this moment that you and your progressive team, we're doing a good job. We're working hard at it. And I need you to hear that, because sometimes as caregivers, we stay so focused on what's not right that we don't give ourselves credit for the things we are doing well, knowing there's always another challenge.
I mean, I will say, Dr. Duren, and this is to your entire listening audience, you know, again, speaking of privilege, the privilege that it has been to be in frequent contact with you, you know, and just kind of the way that we met casually, that kind of thing, and a referral from a mutual colleague of ours that we respect. I have to shout him out, my dad, the great and legendary Dr. Lonnie Joe, is that your words, your pushing of me, your mentoring me through this process is really something that I'm starting to learn directly from you. Because prior to us having contact, I never thought of that at all. Like, it was full steam ahead. Listen, this is not about me. It's totally about her. And when I say I have looked back over 90 days, 120 days, and thought about, because of your advice, how far we've come. Because 90 days ago, this thing was taking me out of here. I could feel myself, and I had to share with other family members, even inside the smaller circle, like, hey, as we're putting legal things in place and so forth and so on, who's going to be next to put some legal things around me, because I could go before her.
That's right.
I could feel the weight of this that much. It is a very, very real scenario.
And thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. You make my heart smile when you talk. There's just so many things we could talk about, but what I'd like to do, if you will give me permission, is that we started a journey together. If we can continually do updates and let people know how you're doing. Right now, the things that you've done so far, and I'm going to have you repeat them, because if you repeat them, they'll mean more to you. But we've started some things, and I want us to just keep moving,
Sure.
making sure mom's the focus, but you've done some things. What I'd like you to do is tell people at this moment, from the day you learned that mom needed additional care, say out loud some of the things that you and your team have successfully done, knowing there's a lot more yet to do.
Absolutely. So, you know, again, I think one of the biggest things was just kangaroo care, if you will, right? So that whole concept around being close to my mother, having some amazing caregivers who are close to her, making sure the engagement side of this is so much, and it means so much to my mother, that she's not just being left in the corner, not being unattended to. I can't say enough about how much I know that has meant to both of us. We kind of have started a new chapter, literally, of our lives, you know, just about conversations that I would have never thought to have with her. Now trying to you know, get as much information from her as I can in this season of her life, so I don't have to have any regrets.
Yes.
When the time comes, if you will. So just the engagement side, we have done things, making sure that she is nourished properly. When she came out of the skilled nursing facility, she was on a liquid diet. They told me she would not take the foods that they were preparing for her, so forth and so on. Again, and we said, hey, well, it just depends on how you're delivering it to her, what kind of foods those are, you know. So we're making sure that she has all of her favorites and those things. You and I laughed about this a couple days ago, where the primary said, hey, I want you to leave that Pepsi out, you know, so forth and so on. And, you know, then she came back later and said, well, pick your battles. And, you know, so whatever it is at this stage that kind of motivates her to want to push forward, you know, is something that we want to deliver. We have gone also beyond what the physical therapists, the nurse practitioners do when they come and visit, and we try to repeat what they've done and build repetition into that routine with myself and the caregivers, to make sure that it's not just when they come twice a week for 30 or 45 minutes, but kind of every couple hours while I have access to the caregivers, we're repeating those same exercises, those same transfers. You know, it doesn't work every day. I'll be very honest, but it's reminding her that, listen, we're not just going to have you lay here and give up on us, you know. And then the backside, like I said, and it should have been first, is always just keeping her prayed up. You know, I mean, that's just what it is. That's the most, you know, this is morning, this is noon. Anytime I may come from, you know, out in the world, and I may say to myself, tell you what, I just want to take a moment with your mom, close your eyes and let's get to it. And, you know, she's like, well, you turn into a preacher, like, what's going on? But it, you know, it has been a significant part of that strategy. And again, you know, this is an ongoing process. I'm learning every day. I can't even explain to you, you know, how much I've taken in this 4-month period. And this is, again, on the extreme side. I mean, the information, it's endless, you know, and so I'm encouraged by that, because I know I haven't scratched the surface of the things that are still possibly out there for me to continue to fight this battle, you know, with people like yourselves and other people that could come in as part of our caregiving team to help us move the process forward.
Outstanding. You warm my heart. You have also worked on getting the legal documents in place, and you suggested something about yourself. Please take the time to get your documents in place.
Absolutely.
That's important. I love that you're taking the time to take care of you, because I'm a believer that a healthy caregiver provides healthy care, and an unhealthy caregiver provides unhealthy care. And that you are consistent. You and your team are loving on her, giving the attention, and being great detectives on understanding what you see and making sure that if something changes, because stuff changes from day to day, and what worked yesterday may not work today, but we're going to be creative enough to make sure it works. But I want to thank you for all of your love and care. You and I could talk for hours, because there's just so many things to talk about. But I just wanted to start a caregiver's conversation with you and ask if you will share your journey with us as you progress. And because your gifts that you're giving to others is that I'm here right now in the midst. And with here right now in the midst, what I'm going to do is share my learnings. And if you guys have notes that you want to send me, send them to me, and I promise I'll get them to Craig. Anything else you'd like to say at all to anyone at all before we close? Because it's been about 30 minutes. It just went by so fast. I can't believe it. Right. Any other thoughts before we transition?
Sure, Dr. Duren. I think in closing, you know, again, I just want to thank you for your diligence in staying connected to us, your humble spirit. I look forward and I'll be, you know, as honest as I need to be with your viewers, that sometimes when I'm in the midst of it all and I forget about you, you never forget about me. So I'm so thankful for that. And to anyone who is listening, who's watching, you know, is to remain encouraged, just to remain encouraged, to celebrate as you've taught me each day, each second, each minute, each hour, you know, and try to pull as much as you can from that loved one, you know, slow things down. It's not ever scenario where whatever you have going on likely is not as busy or there's an excuse to be that busy for what you should be doing for the one that you love the most. And so I just thank you for your time. I hope that this has benefited someone that has been able to kind of hear what we've been describing. And I'm happy to come back with you at any time to share forward progress. And again, just thank you so much.
Craig, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your heart, sharing your mom and your caregiving team. And I love what's her name, Jeanette?
Miss Jeanette, caregiver. Yes, she is the rock. She is our rock for sure. She anchors us.
And at some point, that might be an interesting conversation if she's interested. But our goal is to bring you back and to share more learnings with you. And it's always good to learn just in time. Because if you know something just in time, what you can do is say, you know what, I'm going to try what Craig just tried, or a strategy around it. Because sometimes there's no one right way to do anything. It's right. As many creative ways as you possibly can, with a heart that we're doing the best we can and asking for help when you need help. So thank you for the gift of your time. Thank you for the gift of your heart. And I'm sure we'll talk soon. So thank you. And till our next conversation, when you provide us an update on you, mom, and the family. Thank you, dear.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Duren. God bless you.
You too.